right, I took us live. Oh wait, let me fix your audio. Let me fix your audio.
Detailed with the fights that we went through, or just the highlights, really? Because I know
Just the
there was a
highlights, kind of touch on things as we go. Whatever needs more time, give it to it. I guess.
whatever we remember.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, we're live. This is a hits and misses, kind of like a recap, reflection. I've been wanting to do this for a little while, and Bodie's kind enough to hop on here with me tonight.
Hmm.
So we'll see what happens here. I have some notes and oh wait,
What?
all my secrets were revealed on stream there. Um, so I
Good
have
thing I have the Zoom call up then.
there you go. I do have a few documents with notes kind of spread out. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to make a campaign 2 encounters. Oh wait, campaign. This should be campaign 3. Um,
Don't worry,
yeah.
Ben. I won't peek through the stream.
Like I thought it would be good to have campaign 3 level 2, campaign 3 step by step, and then other various documents. But yeah, it'd probably be better to keep them all condensed in the future. um,
But then
but yeah,
again,
so
you spend time searching for one thing in a 20-page document.
yeah, there's that.
So
That happens.
yeah.
um,
Anyway.
so I have my so this is going to be like a reflection of level 2. What's happened during level 2 of the campaign? You guys just leveled up to level 3. Uh,
Hmm.
I thought that level 2 would last a few sessions, and I think it lasted a few longer than I expected because the dungeon actually took quite a bit longer than I thought it would. I thought that'd be a single session endeavor, but
Really? It was not. We were
no,
in
it
there for
wasn't.
4 or 5 sessions.
I thought it would be one leading up to the boss encounter or like the final room. And I'm kind of
Mm.
glad too because I ended up changing it after we finally got to the room with all the switches. I was like, wow, this is like not. I need something like a little more epic. So, but we'll get to that. Um, so we started. You guys had escorted Deathida to the Army of the Three Kingdoms encampment. And this is
Hmm.
part of like your first quest where you need to take her to Riverside. So you're kind of halfway done with that. Um,
We
but of course,
found. Oh, sorry. Am I speaking out of turn?
oh, please do.
Um, we on the trail there. We were ambushed by some goblins and some bugbears, and
Yeah,
we dealt with that as we did. We investigated a little bit. There was a bugbear there that we had dead to rights. Like we could have killed him if we wanted
hmm
to, but since I play as a bugbear, I was like, I don't want to kill this guy. He's just
you
doing
took
a
pity on
job.
him. Yeah,
And was probably a very good decision because he was pretty helpful.
yeah. He came back
Uh,
as a little bit of a plot device there
mhm.
towards the end of the dungeon.
We left him alive, and we discovered some bodies that were Deathida's cousins.
Yeah,
And we basically told her like, "Hey, your friend, your cousins, your family has died there, and there might be some more that are stuck or have been kidnapped," which leads us after sleeping in the encampment to going back there later, which we otherwise
absolutely.
just wouldn't have done.
Yeah, I tried to drop that hint. I was hoping, like, this is pre level 2, but I was hoping you guys would continue to the encampment, and then return, so that we could fit in leveling up, because we're
Hmm.
level 1 on the way there. So, and I did want to give you guys as many encounters as it took to level up. So, yeah. So this stream will be like more relaxed and conversational too. So, um, just kind of winging it here.
That's the
So
best type.
you guys were successful bringing Deathida to the encampment, and then you were planning to go back anyways because Kendall, uh, found evidence of Hookwit, the person he's after for stealing a book from his teacher. So we had that hook, and then also Deathada's fallen companions. She ended up wanting to know more about that. You guys had already established trust with her, so I thought it would be a good idea to have her become a quest giver of sorts. So she offered you guys pretty good compensation if you were going to be able to, turn up her cousins or contractors, whatever they may have been. Um, so we started with you guys just heading back there and following the tracks north. And along the way, you had released that bugbear, and it's kind of his job to get you guys to the dungeon. It changed his job a little bit when you killed the first goblin that he was working for. So Daggers would have been his boss on the
Oh,
way there. But I did not think that this guy would be super ambitious, wanting to strike it out alone. So he'd probably try to work under the other goblin books that you guys ended up meeting later in the dungeon as well. So when you guys were walking through the forest, I wanted you to suspect that you're being followed, and you ended up finding Friend, and he had found your released horse, and he was riding your horse now, right?
that came from a boar fight that we had. It was on the way back. We encountered a boar. We fought it. We were having a bit of trouble, but I ended up getting the killing blow with a crossbow bolt, and a bunch of these Eladrins came in and claimed the kill, which
Yeah,
sucked. But I think we were hurt, or we didn't really want to have much confrontation, Kendall aside,
right.
and so we kind of like yeah,
There's a
we'll just
lot of them too.
yeah, there was quite a few, so we're like, yeah, we'll let them have the kill, sure, whatever, fine. It's not like we wanted it. We were just defending ourselves, and then we left, and our horses got trampled, and they ran away. And Friend ended up on a horse as we found him again, and it was kind of weird seeing him again because we're like, okay, we let him go last time because we were in a position of power, and now we see this guy again, and he's on the horse that we purchased, but we're
Right.
not aggressive towards him, and then he starts leading us to where we want to go.
And
So
Kendall was sure that he would ambush you, I think.
there was some suspicions all around for sure of what this guy was going to do because this is our second time meeting him.
And he mentioned he wasn't alone also.
Yeah, it was like all the hallmarks of an ambush, but I think we thought about killing him for a second there as we
Yeah.
were like following it. We are like debating whether or not to ice this guy. And we're like, no, no, let's follow him. He probably knows some stuff that we should get at him first,
Yeah, you guys never pulled the trigger on that.
which is
I like
which
I
was
like how
good.
that ended up. Yeah. So he led you to the hole, is what he called it, and this is the dungeon of air and darkness, or was tentatively, until I thought that maybe this Queen of the Fae will not be the Queen of Air and Darkness, but not totally set on that. Usually, the ruler of the Unseelie Court is known as the Queen of Air and Darkness. So I didn't know if she would kind of inherit that title, as this is a different queen than is normally the leader of the Unseelie Court. But that's kind of just semantics there to ponder.
It's
Um,
not real till we say it in game.
right, right. And there was an ogre there. Um, he wasn't hostile immediately, but it was his job to get you guys into the hole. Um, and I kind of left this open for interpretation. I've been trying to employ advice from Luke. Crap, I forget his last name right now. Super popular, like YouTube dungeon master. One of his, later, more recent posts was about never have the monsters attack first, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective. Like, it gives just more opportunities for the encounter to, take on more meaning if the players can be the ones to kind of, their actions determine how it unfolds a little bit more than just, okay, openly hostile. So I've been trying to do that this campaign. Like when with the goblin ambush, they take the dwarves first and try to bargain and things of that nature, or with friend being ready to negotiate. But the ogre had a strange task for you. He asked you to get him some fish.
You said he was what was the it's like a specific diet you have where you eat only fish?
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian. You said he was a pescatarian.
Yeah,
And so he wanted us to
I guess he knows what
go.
that means.
I mean, if that's his name is Fishes, so and he only
Yeah.
eats fish, so I hope he would at least know that. But his job for us was before we could go down into the hole that everybody wants us to jump down into, he wanted us to get him a bundle of fish and like pay tribute in some way. And there was a stream that was just like that we basically went upriver, like going up a hill from, and I went down there and I think I got like a nat 20 on like a fishing check to get some fishes for him.
You rolled really well, and yeah, we're able to catch a ton of fish for him.
So I was like, all right, cool. This guy's got some fish, and we need to like pay him some money. And we made this joke in the outpost that we came from. They were doing this stuff with store credit, and we, of course, all of us thought we were being like grifted pretty hard
Yeah,
because we had to
you
pay
kind of
an
were.
entry fee to get into the camp, and then we get half
Yeah.
of it back in store credit. And I made the joke about, well, if we're paying 1 gold and we get half a gold back in store credit, it would just be a bunch of Electrum pieces that nobody wants anyway.
Yeah.
And so that ended up us just giving fishes 2 Electrum pieces and saying these are so valuable. It's like selling crypto coin to somebody that doesn't know
Right,
what it
right, that's
is.
right.
It's essentially what we did. We're like, yeah, take these 2 Electrum pieces. That's worth so much more
I remember
gold.
that. He's like, how much? And then no Knox, I think it was like more than you can. I don't, or more something
More than you can
ridiculous.
think.
Yeah. I
And
noticed
that
in my notes, because you guys end up going into the hole,
mhm,
following, climbing down a rope, and the ogre, severs the rope when people are still climbing down, of course.
of course.
Um, and then I had, dropped hints that this dungeon is run by goblins, and it's meant to amuse Lady Jude Harrows, Lady Rain, the queen of the Unseelie Fae. But what I meant to do also, and this would go under the misses category if we're going to be, calling out hits and misses here. I thought fishes was a hit because that was fun to me to have you guys like negotiate with the ogre, just give him a ton of fish and kind of trust him. And he's a kind of a brutish ogre, so he turns on you guys a little bit at the end. But overall, it
He's
was
doing his
probably
job.
exactly.
With the whole Ben having the monsters not attack first, I love it because I love making friends with every NPC I can get my hands on, and they're usually people that stab us in the back at first, not
They
even
do have a
after we
habit of
made
that.
friends. So when I was like, "Oh, this guy's just doing his job," I was like, "Okay, we've done his little task. He'll just throw a rope down for us to climb down, and that'll be it." And then he does betray us in the end, but I wasn't really too surprised. I was like, "Yeah, that fits."
Well, I did a lot of backstabbing last campaign too with most of the NPCs.
Hmm.
So yeah. Well, but anyway, so as far as a miss, I wanted to have a picture of a shadowy figure in a deep purple gown. Um, and this would have been, an image of the lady of the dungeon, Lady Rain, um, the Fey Queen. But I missed that part in my notes. Not a big deal, but it would have brought together a little bit more of the concept of the dungeon being kind of dedicated to her.
Mm.
Um, and then after you guys climb down or fall down into the dungeon, then you were in a room with just water for walls, and you were the one who figured out what to do here.
I
It
think
wasn't complicated, but
no, it's the classic door behind a waterfall sort of scenario. I envision it like if I was playing a adventure game like Zelda and I was in a room with waterfalls for walls, there's definitely a
what
hidden
would you
door
do?
somewhere. And
Yeah.
I just recently acquired a belt that summons daggers on command. So I was like, I'm just gonna stand in the middle of the room and just throw daggers at like 5-degree intervals and at the walls until something goes through and doesn't hit, and I found the entrance.
Yeah, and that didn't need to be a hang up. So like the first reasonable attempt at discovering it, I felt was a good solution to go with, and that was you, throwing it at whatever wall. Um, and then we had like a small corridor and
Uh-huh.
the door on a wall that had tallies with different goblin names. Again, Brutus knew the names that were written because you speak goblin.
Yes.
And this is kind of introducing the two goblins that run this dungeon, Sparks and Wires. And the concept behind it is that these two goblins are, competing for, to entertain the queen. And the tallies represent, whichever kills they're responsible for. And if you had counted the tallies or anything like that, I would have, explained that they were even for whatever reason. And that's because after I started making these traps, I realized that most of them used sparks and wires to, be cause effect or whatnot. So I thought I just didn't rethink that because I thought that kind of lends itself to the silliness of goblins, and they're just kind of like competing over who is getting the most kills, but they're both like making their own tallies and like claiming, responsibility for whichever kills or, successful traps.
Probably fighting over the same kill that happened with both of their traps happening at once.
Exactly. Yeah, each trap is pretty much set by both of them, so they both have claim to it, but they're kind of too stupid and in a way prideful, But yeah,
Stubborn.
yeah, definitely. Just kind of, I was, they're just kind of foolish goblins in this situation. Um,
When I saw the name Sparks and Wires, Wires was obviously like a tripwire or something, which I figured was self-explanatory. Like, I hit a tripwire, like an axe is gonna come down and hit my head. But for Sparks, I wasn't sure if it was like sparking a flame, or I thought more along the lines of like electricity sparks.
mm,
So I was thinking there's gonna be like
I
some
see.
sort of Tesla traps in the dungeon somewhere with like using magical.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like, so I was like, okay, so these are goblins, and one of them is just really like crafty, and the other one's just kind of like a weird mage that just has like one trick that he can do, and that's it.
That one's just like has like a reel of wires it carries around the dungeon. The other one is like a genius.
But
Well,
really fixates us on one thing that he can do and doesn't branch out.
it would have to also, those traps would also have to use wires as well on some level, for the electrical current. So that would have
That's just
worked
what
as
I
well.
thought.
Yeah. So I figured this dungeon being run by goblins should be pretty dank and wretched. So,
It was. Oh my
so,
God. The next room was horrible.
and this is just a 15-foot pathway, but the flagstones were all removed and covered in feces. And this is where all the poop jokes started. And I didn't realize I had made a poop dungeon until until then, until that
Until that
moment.
moment.
Yes. In that
Have
room, sorry.
having been described as we open the door, having a hallway with like 4 foot like or like 3 foot high like sludge that we had to trudge through, and like sconces on the wall, and like the rank odor that we got immediately. I was like, what are we doing here? What is going on?
Apparently, everybody's experienced poop dungeons before except me. So, for me, it was a first. But so in this, there was a giant rat with giant mosquito-like creatures, sturges,
Mm-hmm.
feeding. So this was the first like combat encounter in the dungeon.
Hmm.
I think I used all three sturges, but I might have only used two. I can't recall.
There was three, I think,
Okay.
because I remember I insta killed one and then two more
Yeah.
showed up.
Yeah, you guys dispatched those like very easily. It seemed like.
Hmm.
Um, I had here. So you guys ended up just trekking through, and there was a one tripwire within the muck that was a trap, and then it lit one of the lamps that had like it had no cover, so the flame would just ignite all the gases in the room like a fireball at head
Hmm.
level. So Yeah,
I
that was
almost
danger in
I
there.
I almost stripped that one, and someone had to disarm it for me as I just sat there.
Right.
And that's when we figured, oh, these are not just like torches, these are actual traps. And so we checked each one as we went through. But I think there was one more that was kind of like it was sort of a trap, but it wasn't set up. If I remember correctly, or did it have a key in it? I don't remember.
You might be thinking of the way the key was installed in the lamp. Um, because I don't think I use any more torch traps. I was planning to use one more potentially, but I don't think there were more. I think that was the main. We might get to it though. It could have been. Next time we should just do them like right after the session or. But then I
Yeah,
was thinking, well, some of this stuff you can't reveal until the dungeon's completed either.
so
You know,
you're
so.
done. Yeah.
Um,
I would like to note as a player, this was the first chaotic moment of this dungeon because as we're sitting here in this dungeon in this room specifically, we're rolling con saves to not get points of exhaustion,
oh yeah,
which
from
was a major
heaving.
thing,
Yeah.
which was a major thing for this dungeon. It came up quite a lot, more than you would think
Yes.
it would. And at first we were searching the floor of the muck, like searching through it for a key to get through because the door was locked. And we spent like one or two rounds doing that, and then I decided this. I started screaming for help and to get out of here, and like kicked down the door with a nat 20 just to get free. And a few of us got exhausted, and that led us to a funny little lamp room, I
Yeah.
believe.
Before we leave this room, I thought, when the trap was triggered, that somebody might try to throw cloth over it or tell everybody to duck beneath the gases that had risen, and that would have helped to some degree. Um, I would have given, advantage on a dex save if the trap did end up going off, but I was gonna have it deal 2d6 of fire damage, which could have been devastating. Could have been a
Yeah.
lot. And so one thing I did expect was for people to investigate or search the room a little bit more. And oh hey Erebus, welcome. It's been a while, my friend. Good to see you. We're just doing a little bit of a recap of some of our recent sessions here. But I had expected maybe somebody to investigate or search, and you would have found dried feces upon one side of the door, and you would have found that the door could be lifted and then laid upon the ground to kind of use as a platform potentially. And then that would have gotten you past the trap within the sludge. But, yeah, it's not something I was offering up. In these situations, I was kind of waiting for you guys to come up with what you thought the solutions were instead of leading it with just suggesting checks to make. I mean, I didn't think that would be obvious at all. It would have just been something if you guys had decided to investigate or, whatnot.
Look at closely. I think we were panicking at that moment, and we wanted to leave.
Yeah, well, everybody was getting sick, so there was a bit of a time crunch on it.
But we got to get out
It's
of
like we got
here.
to get out of here before we're totally exhausted. Um, so then, like you said, though, the lamp room came, and then this one I wasn't sure what to do at first. But I put some a shadow in there, or
A few.
two shadows. Yeah, two shadows, and because when you guys entered the room, I think I had
There was no light.
no light. Okay, none of the lamps were lit. See, I
No.
wrote a few ways to do this, and then can't quite recall exactly how I ended up running it.
Yeah, we went in and there was no light, and we're like, there's a bunch of lamps in here, and we're like, there's like 50 lamps in this room. We're gonna have to roll a bunch of checks to find a key for the door that's locked right in front of us. And so we started searching, and I
Right.
believe uh Kendall lit up one of the lamps with like light or like dancing lights or something like that, and then shadows showed up, and then
Yeah.
shadows showed up.
Yeah. It began to cast strange shadows because of the lamps and crates, and so you guys were effective against the shadows too, because they can be devastating if they hit a few times. Because they
Yeah,
didn't they didn't hit you guys much, right?
they hit me once, and I was like ruined. Like a bunch of my strength was gone, and like I got
Right.
hurt pretty bad.
I think there was only one strength deduction though. I was hoping for maybe a kill there in that encounter. It didn't happen.
Honestly, I remember trying to attack those shadows and it not going great. I remember I couldn't hit or couldn't do like any damage to it.
Right. It was challenging, definitely. And so uh, I knew that within this room there's a lamp that has the knob mechanism is the key to the room, or to a door. It ended up being to a different door. I always love in games where you know get past one section, but then you find a locked door and you're like, where is the key? I've been searching, this chamber. It's not here. Well, you have to go back a little bit, because you could have walked through the room without discovering that. So Jason just started, or Kendall started, just lighting lamps, right?
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, roll me. I think I had a D8 or a D6. I think it was a D8, and the highest number was going to be, if he rolls that, then he's doing this in such an order that he lucks out and finds the key pretty easily. And that's what happened. So yeah, I wrote out like different complicated ways that this trap would work, and I think it worked fine with having everything dark, and then you try to find like which lamp. I think I had it so that that lamp did not turn on, and so that prompted the further investigation that revealed that it was a key. In fact, was part of the lamp, and that would signify darkness, like getting back to the theme of air and darkness.
let's see.
For clues, I think this was a little bit of a miss, and I just lucked out that Jason did what he did, and it solved the puzzle. Because clues would have been that there's like smashed glass and lamp parts in the corners around the room. Because I expected you guys to just start breaking lamps until you found a key.
I can see us doing that for sure. Maybe not like immediately because maybe I would have thought that they were cursed in some way. But I think if it got down to it, I think we would have started smashing some lamps if we had to.
Yeah, I think you guys took a short rest here too.
This was the first short rest of the dungeon. Is it we didn't use in our previous campaigns that we had played, they don't really come up that often. It's we usually just do long rests. So this was the first time where we did multiple short rests in a dungeon, kind of like how the mechanic is designed to be used. And
Yeah,
that's where I learned how helpful being a fighter is when you have to recoup your losses. Uh, because I was pretty hurt. Some of us had used some spells and such and were exhausted, and some of us got rid of those exhaustion points through various ways. And Kendall, Jason, who was playing the wizard, got some spell slots back, and that's when I realized that I effectively had a hit die no matter what after a short rest because of second wind. So I started being a little bit more brazen after that, but not so much so to
okay.
just like be suicidal. But it was at that point where I was like, I'm the tankiest one here, and I am like the pretty much able to heal myself, and these guys can't.
Yeah, there was a lot of times I was nervous for Brutus, but
It
then your
got
turn
bad,
would come and you'd kind of have an answer for it. So
and if I remember correctly, no. In previous times, I don't know if it happened in the dungeon, but No Nox was also taking hits pretty bad, and since he's an orc, he's got that thing where he comes back at one hit point.
right, right.
So, so he had a bunch of those experiences, and
That
it
was
was
just like
basically,
terrifying. It's like, oh, you're dead. Wait.
"Oh, you're not dead," and now I had to take that on. Except when I went down, and I had to rely on people to get me back up.
Yeah. And we're using a different kill or death mechanic, so you only get one turn to be revived before you need to make or fail one save.
Hmm.
And so it makes things a little bit more dire. I kind of like that because in the past, I've noticed it'll be like, oh, he's got 3 saves to make. I'm going to keep fighting a little bit, and then maybe somebody else will help. But like now, everybody's jumping all over. It's like, oh, we need to make sure we save this person quickly. So, like you were saying, though, after the lamp room, there's the,
The
caverns.
maze.
Yeah, small maze with the cockatrice. Um, I think I put two in there for you guys. That's what I had planned.
I think there was two, yeah. And there was also
So
two statues of dwarves as well.
yeah, for me it was a little bit of a miss because I had intended to really set the stage and have the first reveal be of the dwarf that had been turned to stone. And sometimes there's so many things that you're navigating as the GM, you don't remember exactly how you wanted to set up a situation. And so I kind of like I think I revealed the sound of the cockatrice before I had intended to, and then revealed the statue because I wanted it to be that you saw the statue first, and then this is kind of your first clue at what you would be encountering here. So just a slight miss for me there. I would have liked to have set the stage a little bit better for that. Nobody got turned to stone.
No, I think there was a close call that we had where someone almost got turned to stone, but it got resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But we made sure to kill those guys immediately because we could not afford to wait around and lose somebody down there.
I was going to put a couple of goblins in here, but I ended up
Mm,
removing them. And there was also going to be a tripwire trap,
mm.
but I took them out in favor of letting just getting to the next chamber a little bit earlier. I don't know if that would have been better to do. I'm not really sure because the cockatrice fights they weren't like super easy, but again, nobody was turned to stone, so they could have been a little more difficult, perhaps.
It's easy until it gets one person gets turned to stone, and then it really
Right.
snowballs from there.
That's a good point. Yeah. Like because in that small maze, I also had the small holes in the wall. That's where you guys ended up finding Hookwit, and
After he got
so
hit by a rock.
yeah, just thrown into the hole, and so you guys found Hookwit there, and that was kind of how I had envisioned him being found, just hiding there, cowering in fear. But he's also sent to trick you guys, and he didn't do a lot of tricking.
I I despite him having like bad blood with one of our party members, I really didn't expect him to do anything like against us.
He
I
didn't
I
seem very
figured
threatening, huh?
I figured this guy was stuck in a hole and he said he was there for like 3 days or something, and I was like, we're obviously he does not want to be here and we're his ticket out. I don't think he's gonna try and sabotage us in any way until we're out of this hole. So I was fully like, okay, I don't think you're gonna go against us, but you're gonna stay in front for sure, so you just don't run away like you have before. I didn't think he would really do anything, and
Yeah, he
whoa.
was there to give you guys bad advice, you know, if it came to it. And he didn't really get the opportunity to because what happened in the
Right.
next chamber. But you guys got past the cockatrices, and then you used the key to unlock that door to get to the next chamber. And when I had the dwarves as stone, it became
Hmm.
kind of like, well, how long do I really want them to be stone? Do I want this to actually be an obstacle for the players, like moving these stone dwarves around? And I thought it would be better to have them come out of that kind of quickly and become, um, kind of an asset to what was happening by relaying some information. So I don't think they snapped out of it right then, but pretty shortly thereafter. Because in the next chamber, so I was going to have, the goblins dive out of this room through the greased pipes that are kind of an ongoing part of this dungeon. Easy for the navigation for goblins. And then I also counted on the fact that Brutus could squeeze into this because he's a bugbear, so he could become very tiny. And so
I could have followed him.
yeah. So I was wondering at what point you might try to go through one of these holes. But so, anyways, I you guys come to the next chamber. It's a steeply ascending stairway so that everybody can get into the room before they see what's happening, instead of like one person comes through the door and then everything is explained. Because on the far side of the chamber there were goblins there taking pot shots at you guys.
Hmm.
you'd come upon them trying to shove the dwarf down one of these holes. Maybe they thought the dwarf was small enough to fit. Um, who knows? Maybe they're trying to clog it in there just because they're jerks.
We we approached this as I think I think I was one of the first people to go down there, and since I was a bugbear and I kind of had the look and I could talk the part, I
You tried
tried
to
to
trick
like
him.
I would try to trick him and persuade him to just like let us through.
Yeah.
Like I tried to play the part as like, hey, I also work for this dungeon. Can we just get these guys through quickly because I got somewhere to be? And then we also tried to Nonox tried to trick them into thinking that he was fishes and that he was angry that they weren't going to let him through, and that failed horribly.
Right. Yeah.
And then we just got shot at a bunch.
Yeah. They would duck and pop up to take a shot, and so the only way to approach that as players is you ready your action. For when an enemy becomes visible to fire your spell or your ranged attack. And so one thing I missed in this room was I did have a tripwire set up across the center of the chamber that was
Mm.
supposed to blow up the barrels when you guys, walked across the chamber or maybe charge the goblins to try to fight them in melee. And I completely forgot about that. The goblins fled while you were still all on the one side of the chamber, but I should have still triggered that trap as you guys, crossed the threshold. I described the barrels a couple of times to give the sense that, oh, there's something here in the middle of the room, and then there was the visual on the map that might have given it away. But so this is when you guys first run into the actual goblins, though. And they fled by diving down those greased pipes that have been kind of a constant. And you actually thought about following them down one of these pipes.
There was some deliberation of should we do this? Could we do this? And is it a good idea to do this? Because I believe at first there was talk of like sending Hookwit through there because or him wanting to go through there to get
Yeah, yeah.
away, which seemed like weird because he was like, yeah, guys, let
He
me
was
go
gonna
through
go
this hole
scout
in the
for you.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was gonna scout for him. And now that I know that he was working for the dungeon, I was like, oh, that makes sense why he wanted to get away so bad. But we weren't having any of it. We're like, no, you're staying with us until we make a decision. I made an example of my bugbear abilities to show him that I could fit through if I needed to.
Yeah,
But
everybody was like, "Wait, I'm gonna get in there too," and
and
you're
then it's
like,
like
"You just can't."
one like thick calf fits in there and that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And then we talked about that for a while and we're like, okay, we should go down these little stone slides that were described to us. There's like two right next to each
right.
other. And
So if you had gone down the greased pipes, um, you would have fallen into either a trap with like a trap door on the floor or a pit trap that you might not have been able to get out of. I was talking about this too with my brother-in-law, and he's like, "You should make the pipe just get narrower and narrower so they just get stuck." And I thought that would
oh,
be
that's
fun.
horrifying.
Yeah. So I
There's
thought
a
that'd be
there's a real
fun.
life scenario where that happened and that's not great.
So Brutus goes down thinking, he can clear this pipe, but he chooses the wrong one because the goblins went down specific pipes that don't lead to the trap or death or whatnot. And so, Brutus gets stuck in there and then they're like jabbing him or lighting it on fire or what have you.
I have
I
to
mean,
start
the pipe's
crawling my way
greased,
back
so
up.
yeah, well, and then it's greased, so you wouldn't be able to really, somebody would have to help you out. And then meanwhile, they light up the grease with fire and whoo,
I
that
think
just
that
felt
would
a
have been
little mean.
funny. I would have loved screaming as Brutus as I'm trying to claw my way out with like daggers in the slide, just
Yeah,
trying to get up.
just burning from behind.
Help! Help! I love screaming as Brutus. It's fun.
So I thought, I thought at that point Brutus, like when I designed the dungeon, I thought Brutus might go that way to scout, and then that would be the party splitting, and I thought that would be pretty fun. But I also knew that that would probably be the end of Brutus if he did that. So
Hmm.
good call
And
not
probably the
doing that.
end of everybody else because the next encounter.
And
Oh
you're talking
boy.
the two slides, and so there's the two stone slides in the wall, and they both lead down, and they both spiral just in opposite directions. And so it's like, which one do we take?
And it was
Um,
just such an arbitrary choice that we just said screw it and picked one, and it was absolutely the wrong one.
And I had mentioned if you guys would like to investigate further, you can, but that was kind of glossed over. So we were just kind of playing it by ear. And Hookwit's the one who found out which slide was trapped.
Was
Because
there any Oh, sorry. Was there any indication of which one was the correct choice?
so what I have here, um, and it doesn't. Some of this some dynamics changed from when I wrote this, but the goblins sometimes bring their captives down the right side slide. They greased both slides and made markings evident on the left side, like traces of fingers trying to grip the walls of the greased slide. The other side has a single wide track as the people were slid down on skids of wide planking. So I intended to give the impression that like the left slide people are being forced into, and then the right slide people are taking more voluntarily. And that would have helped somewhat because down the left slide was a gelatinous cube.
Yes, we not trusting Hookwit and having him go first in almost every room we go to set off traps because he's it's fine if he lives, but it's also fine if he dies. We kind of were sitting there and I figured we were stalling out as a party trying to figure out which one to go down. I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna kick Hookwit into one of them and see what happens. So I kicked him into one of them and I waited and I listened and I heard nothing from him because he was in a gelatinous cube. He couldn't speak. So I was like, oh, he just ran away. I have to go after him right now. And I dived in,
Right, right.
and a chain reaction started of us, kind of like lemmings being stuck in this cube one by one in a really bad spot.
Thanks, love. And then I know you guys just went one at a time. It was kind of hard to adjudicate because you guys are moving you're being kind of like force moved into the gelatinous cube. But I wanted
Hmm.
everybody to have some kind of save because, you get a save when the cube tries to move into your square. So I thought, I mean, we're level 2. A gelatinous cube would be dead, like, can be super deadly. They do so much damage. So I wanted you guys to have the chance to evade it at least somewhat. But I think everybody ended up getting stuck in it, at least for part of a round.
Yes. We all got stuck in it, and we were sitting there, and we're all panicking a little bit because we're all in this gelatinous cube, and then No Nox goes down the slide, and as he's going down, since we had a very good time trying not to metagame that we all knew that there was a cube there,
Yes.
and
You
so
guys were great about that, too. That was really cool.
and so Joel, who is playing No Nox, which is a orc bard, he's described as he was going down and he saw what was happening. If he could try and like use the momentum to kind of kick me out of the cube, which I think either was like a check on his end to get me out or like a check to give me advantage on getting out or something like that, which ended up being successful,
Yeah.
which was a
They,
really good move.
yeah, one of the suggested mechanics is that a person can try to pull you out, basically. So we're kind of like flowing with that idea of one person can save another.
And that's what ended up happening for the next like round or two, as I'm using my pole arm to basically get in and like hook people
Yeah.
by like belt loops and get them out and pull them out so they don't die immediately. I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of damage was taken by like two party members and they were getting really hurt. I tried to prioritize
I think Joel
whoever.
got taken down to his one hit point because of his orcish. What do they
Yeah,
call it? Yeah,
resistance,
resilience.
resilient. I think it's something like that.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think it was me. It was
I was so
Kendall.
nervous you guys would be in that at the beginning of the cube's turn because I think that's when it deals its damage at the beginning of
It's
its turn. So, and then I forewent having it make its further attacks, and I know that Jason was kind of expecting it to also lash out like past the pillars and things like that because it does have an attack. But I guess when I envisioned the encounter, I didn't really think of it doing that. I just kind of thought of it being a trap. more so. But that might have taken it to a level of difficulty that might have been too much.
How much range does it have? Is it 5 or 10?
It might be 10. I'll have to look it up.
Because if it was 10 foot, I would have to been the only person that could actually like feasibly hit it without being getting backlash because I'm a bugbear and I have a pole arm, so I have a 15-foot reach on my turn.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just a 5 foot reach on that.
Okay, so
But
yeah,
but that was preventing Kendall from getting in there to try to help. He's like, I'm not going close to this thing. Like,
which I don't blame him for that at all. Nor
yeah,
would I expect him to try and get people out of a gelatinous cube as a wizard.
yeah. I was just mostly using it for the like engulf aspect of it, which I enjoy. This is the first time I've used a gelatinous cube in a way that's like tricky enough to get the players into it. So that was kind of fun for me. And then,
We
sorry.
we, we tried to we did some improvising with rope and using a bowl and using the pillars that it was strapped in with as a like a lever for advantage with my pole arm.
Yeah,
And we got everybody out,
we
and it
got
was so
everybody out
good.
except Hookwit.
Except Hookwit, who was we then realized was dissolved to bones in the gelatinous cube, and we all had a
Like,
laugh
oh,
and just kind of like staring like,
yeah.
oh, this is not good.
Oops.
And we're like, well, at least that's over.
But the
Woof,
dwarves
woof.
followed because No Knox, after you guys all escaped, No Knox is like, okay, come down this slide. And so I made perception checks for the dwarves because they're up here like trying to listen at both slides. And I rolled
And
a nat 1 for
they
them,
rolled
I
bad.
remember. Yeah. And so they went down the same slide as you guys and were in the cube, but you saved them too. That was good.
I think one of them got hurt or was very close to like dying,
Yeah,
and we managed to pull
absolutely.
him out. And it was at that point where we were like, "Ooh, good job, gang! We survived, and we just kind of pelted it with magic and attacks
Yeah.
until it died." And then
Jason
we
was like, or Kendall said, I'm gonna kill this thing before we move on,
absolutely
which I did
we
not expect. So for me, like,
really
yeah, I know. And when it happened, it seemed so obvious. I was like, wow, I thought they would try to leave, and then that's when the columns and the levers would come into play, because there's two levers, and I put them right by the door because I wanted you guys to think that they operate the door.
which we
Um,
did.
yeah, and you came to the conclusion that, oh, there's two levers, we must operate them both at the same time.
And we
Um,
sat there for 10 minutes talking, 10, 15 minutes talking about it.
you didn't want to get blown up, which is
No,
understandable. So I think a mage hand, or no, his
unseen servant.
right, because then he was able to trigger them both at the same time, which seemed very important. And that's when the columns lowered. So it was a really good thing that you had killed the gelatinous cube, because otherwise that's when the cube comes for you guys.
I believe a gelatinous cube has like really slow movement, doesn't it? It's like,
It does, but part of its attack is is moving up to its speed. So yeah, it moves 15 feet, but when it uses engulf, it can move its speed and then it engulfs you. So it basically has 30. It can move up to 30 and attack or engulf you. So that's like that makes up for the slow movement a bit. So it was
yeah,
able to cover the room and get you
I
guys.
I think for sure if we didn't kill that thing, or at least done some damage to it before we let
Yeah,
the levers go, I think that would have been a wipe for sure. I think we all would have died.
maybe, maybe because it does so much damage. And again, this is the first time I've used a gelatinous cube, maybe since fourth edition. So, you know, I wasn't as familiar with using its pseudopod attack either, the reach attack.
Hmm.
So that might have come into place after it was freed. I probably would have just made a decision on the fly for that. But yeah, you guys killed it before you lowered the columns that let it roam, and then on top of one of these lowered columns was a key, and that's how you made it to the last chamber of the dungeon.
And we also had a little gift.
Oh yes, and it was funny because we were just talking about battle royale style movies before this, and this
Yes,
is
we
totally a Hunger Games
move.
comes from Hunger Games basically, having
I got
sponsors gift you
sponsored.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. The first was from
Friend, which
Magdell,
was
and we didn't
Magdale.
know who. I think we didn't know who that was. It said best of luck and was just a potion of healing. That's what I have written. I think that's what I did. And then second, we had the whetstones from Friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are basically like magical whetstones that make your first attack deal a little bit of extra damage. I'm also trying to go a lot lighter in this campaign with the magic items.
No,
So
Ben,
like
I want my 3 magical artifacts
three
next session,
legendary
please.
items. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like items like this for this campaign will end up being a little bit more impactful, even just basic magic items and such. So yeah, I wanted these to come from sponsors or people who were betting on you failing or succeeding the dungeon. And then since you guys were so cool with Friend, the queen invited him. He so successfully lured you into the dungeon. The queen invited him to game on the dungeon with them. Usually he's just meant to lure you in and gets paid a fee or whatnot. But the queen had been so impressed, and so as was revealed later, he bet a pretty good sum on you guys succeeding,
And
and so had granted help in this way.
um, I thought that he was like, because when you just originally described it was like a piece of hay that the package like was delivered onto to soften the
Yeah,
blow. You described that there was like a chute going upward, and I kind of
right.
imagined that just went to the surface. So I thought this was Friend like kind of like helping us out on the sly, of like being like,
Mm,
hey, you guys didn't kill me when you tried the chance, so I'm gonna give you a
yeah,
little potion and some whetstones here to make sure you give you a little edge, but not too much to jeopardize my job, sort of deal. And
yeah.
then
That
when we
makes
saw him
sense.
later in the dungeon, I was like, how did you deliver this if you're stuck in a roof?
Yeah, and the mechanics of that, I'm not sure exactly how they work because there is the matter of like going between the material and the Fey realm, and which one are you in while you're in the dungeon. So I pictured that you guys are still in the material realm, and in some way gifts are delivered, but it's probably through by way of the goblins that run the dungeon, and through word from the queen or her translator Bloom, who speaks with them. I wasn't, the mechanics weren't that important for how it actually happened, but something like that.
Hey, it's the Feywild. You got a lot of leeway.
Um, so after this, I had like 2 or 3 more chambers for the dungeon originally, but there were
Hmm.
I think 2 weeks between us playing that game, or maybe even 3, because I think we ended up taking a 2 week break. Um,
There was a pause, yeah, for a decent bit of time.
and I thought, wow, this dungeon is not feeling like climactic the way I had originally written it. I'd have you guys go through some more murky water, fight quippers, and then probably run into the 2 goblins that run the dungeon. And then it'd be like a series of halls where they would use these pipes to get out of sight into the next area, or like work their way behind you, kind of single you out. But I thought, I want to do something like a little more epic, like a little bit that feels like a boss fight, or like, I don't know. So that's when I devised the 5 lever trap,
And
or
I I
puzzle.
was I was wondering like how much further we had to go because on Roll20 on what we play on, there's you can kind of zoom out, you can see like the whole map, except we're using like realistic shadows and vision and stuff. So it's like you go out to like your dark vision or some such, and like there's walls and obstacles that block your vision. So we can
Yeah,
see the rooms we're in, but not the entire map. And so we're sitting here in this room with 5 levers, and I was like, there's a whole other half of the
the map
map
was
left.
huge. Yeah,
And I was sitting there like, I have no hit dice left. I am exhausted, and we have half of a map left to go. We're gonna
some
die in here.
sometimes I throw little curveballs at the players when I suspect they may metagame a bit or things like that. So like, because you originally mentioned that a few sessions before, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. Like they think it's going to be a mega dungeon, like levels of dungeon. Um, And so I just stuck with it. I was like, well, let's just leave it a big file, and it kind of leaves more to the imagination. But yeah. And then I thought of ways of incorporating that in the future too, like maybe it connects to other things or places, but without, going too much into that. Um, yeah.
We
So
got a,
I, sorry,
we got another gift as well as we went into this room. There's another hay pile.
did I give you
There's
guys another potion?
it was the whetstones in the room before, and then it was the potion in the next room that we
Okay.
got. And then we had these five levers, and that's where we ended the session. So when we started the five lever puzzle, it was fresh. It was like everyone
Yeah.
was awake and alert, and we were all critically thinking. Not enough to avoid a mimic.
And so I have actually a few notes on the hits and misses for this because originally I was just going to do the five lever trap. And I am going to release the five lever puzzle. I am going to release this on Drive Through RPG. Um, Maybe do like another video on explaining how it all works and how to run it. But like the basic overview is that there's the wall with five levers on it, and two of them are identified with symbols. And then you have gates throughout the chamber with different symbols in front of the gates. And so the first puzzle is what symbols correspond to what gates. You already have two of them given, and the states of the gates were different, so that one of the levers that was revealed was thrown to one side to indicate that a gate on either one of the sides might be affected by this, because each symbol was in front of two gates except for the boss gate. And then another symbol that was revealed had both of the gates up, so the lever is straight up. And so you guys figured out these levers correspond with these symbols. And then I think it was Jason Kendall, who plays Kendall, figured out, I think that throwing this to the left is going to lower the gate on the left, because that's what standing on this symbol looking at the gates, that's what the position of the gates is. And that was correct. So figuring out how the levers worked with what information was already available was kind of the first step, and that was pretty effective.
We went through and we figured out, like left opens the left door, right opens the right door, middle closes both.
Yeah.
And we were looking through, and there was a hallway with like two sets of gates that had one symbol that we already knew, and the other symbol was one we had to find out. And then there
Yep.
was two gates that were against a wall that had a chest in separate rooms.
Yeah.
And we
A
were
chest
like,
behind
okay.
each gate. And these
And we're
gates
like,
are transparent.
they're transparent, but magic can't get through them and can't
Yep.
survive past them. It like cuts the connection, so you can't cheese it. So we were like, ooh, there's loot, and we found another room and there was a goblin named Books, and then our friend, the bugbear, whose name is Friend, stuck in there. And seeing as how they were stuck in the dungeon, and I trusted Friend, I was like, hey, we should get Friend out at the very least and make sure that like see what he knows and see what he can tells us. And then we're kind of iffy on Books because Books we encountered him before in a fight,
And he tried to kill
and
you.
he tried to kill you and he ran away. And I was like, okay, he's stuck in the situation as us, so he probably won't try to kill us that quickly. And even if he tells us some information, even if it is wrong, it can still give us a clue about what's actually correct. And that ended up being something that was useful because we released both of them,
Yep. You
and
let them both out.
we let them both out, and we asked Books like, hey, you apparently know what's going on in this place. What did these levers do? And he told us that the ones on each of the ends, I believe, were locking, whereas you did it and then it would stay closed or it would stay in that position.
Actually, that was revealed when No Nox searched the locks more thoroughly. He found the locking mechanism, so that there was, two of the levers had locking mechanisms. So if you flip them
Mhm.
one way, you can't switch it back or open it the other way. And so,
I think I actually remember what Books told us. Books told us
oh,
what those levers like did, like which ones they opened up, and it was wrong.
right, he tricked you. He
Because
lied.
he lied. We of course, since we're D&D players, we're gonna go after the chest first. So we figured out which one
There's
opened the
this
chest.
the symbol in front of the two gates, and behind these gates is each a chest in each each chamber. And you guys thought rightly, oh, one of these is a mimic. Which one is it? And I didn't want to give it away, but actually this is where I have a couple of misses. Um, I think I should have let Elias's check reveal a little bit more, give a little bit better of a clue. But I wanted it to be ambiguous and just kind of a crapshoot. But I did have here written that if you make a successful perception check, then the velvet upon one of the chests seems to ripple a bit, as though an invisible hand brushed across it. So that might have, tipped off, oh, that one's the mimic. Let's go for
That's
the
a
other.
weird chest. Don't touch that one.
Exactly. Um,
But before we actually opened up any of the chest rooms, we saw that there was a very weird cat at the end of the hallway
behind a gate, yeah.
behind a gate. And since we were misled by books, he told us that one of these levers opened to one of the chest rooms. So we're like, okay, yeah, we'll use that one. We opened it, and it let the displacer beast out.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we saw it
Luckily,
ahead
you
of
guys were
time,
smart. Yeah.
and we were like, we're locking off those doors for sure. And then we did the
Yeah.
chest
You
room.
had a way of blocking the hallways that the boss was behind. Like, so it was freed from its original trap, but then there was like two gates in front of it, one in either
Hmm.
hall. It couldn't come for you guys.
And we were
You didn't kill
oh,
him after he did that to you.
no, uh, he did die for his actions though later.
Yeah.
But that led us to opening up one of the chest rooms, the one that we wanted to open up, despite our incorrect assumption that it was a safe chest. Because I don't think any of us in character knew what a mimic was.
Right.
And
Which gets
since
a
we
little tricky.
and since we didn't know what a mimic was, we had no reason to check a chest to see if it is a mimic or look
Right.
that closely. Like we were looking to see if it was trapped, which is
Definitely.
like seems the par
Makes
for the
perfect
course in the
sense.
dungeon. Like this, one of these is obviously trapped because there's blood on the walls and a blood pool at the other's chest, like at the bottom of it. So like people have died here looting these things. So we're gonna try and make sure we select the right one.
So my thought was that when somebody was attacked, their blood is sprayed upon the wall, and then they,
Mm,
finish the fight, pretty quickly. And then when they get to the other chest, they're just dripping blood, and that's why there would be a puddle of blood.
I
Not very
see.
good hints, but that was my reasoning behind it. I think what I would have done, as far as the mimics, I think that I would make the lever that triggers the gate for the treasure chests the mimic instead of the treasure chest, and have just one of them be empty or have the contents divided between the two of them, something like that. Because I think that would be more fun than the traditional, which I have never used a mimic before either.
Oh, this was
So
your first mimic?
yeah,
Hey man, you messed me up good.
cool. No, it was fun to use. And there's nothing wrong with it. But lately, the traditional mimic has gotten a little bit of flack in the community. Just to spice it up, if you have experienced players, I probably would have made the lever itself the mimic, and then done something else with the chests. Maybe I don't know,
Oh, I see what you're talking about. I
the
thought
lever
you're
that opens either gate. Yeah, because there's five levers, and so you
yeah, they're like it's not what this is a lever.
it's one of the treasure chests. I know this monster. But then you get that, then you take that seasoned player out because they think they're so smart that. Yeah.
I thought what you were alluding to is that whichever one we chose would be a mimic and we would have to fight it.
Mm.
But no, having the lever be a mimic would have been pretty funny. I don't know, would have been like a normal mimic stat wise, or would have been like a bit weaker since it's just a lever.
I think I would have just kept it the same.
So I probably still would have died.
That was a tough fight too, man. I was getting nervous.
Speaking of which,
Oh,
we don't have a rogue in our party, and no one knows how to pick a lock. And Brutus is a pretty dexterous feller, so I figured maybe he could try his best and went up to
Yeah.
the chest to try and pick it, and he picked it and his arm got stuck. And he was
Yeah.
like, this chest is trying to hug me and I don't like it. And so I pulled away, and then I got snatched by a mimic. And what ended up happening was a very scary fight where a fighter and a main damage dealer and the tank was restrained the entire time. It went unconscious about two times during the fight in consecutive turns,
Yeah. It was getting hairy.
while everyone else was pelting it with rocks, arrows, and spells trying to
Just
kill it
minor
before I
damage
died.
too. Yeah.
And this is where we really introduce the a mechanic that we're doing for this campaign, where if you go unconscious, not only does your initiative change, and then your next turn you have to roll a save and either you die or not, but each time that happens, you gain a point of exhaustion,
Right.
which
Which to
is
me makes a lot of sense. If you're knocked unconscious, you're gonna be exhausted.
which is oh man, that is a rough time if that keeps happening to
Oh
you.
well, because you're right up there, and you just kept getting knocked down and knocked down. Is like, oh, and at that point, you weren't rolling super well either.
No, I was having a tough time, and not only that, um, the whole character build I have currently is the fact that I don't have to be close to the enemy to hit them. I can be 15 feet away and stab them.
Yeah.
So it's like no, I do have good health and I do have good AC for a fighter, as you're supposed to have, but also I don't have to be there in harm's way most of the time. But I'm not gonna send anyone else in my stead unless it's a
Yeah.
wild shaped badger taking a hit for me. That would be the only time that I would ever, accept someone else being the tank. But it was hairy. It was bad.
So
I
you
got
guys fought the mimic and defeated it barely,
yes,
and then
and
you
it
thought we need to rest. Like we
we,
gotta sleep, a
we
real
not a
rest.
short rest, well, real rest. We got to go to bed. And we went up to the levers and we closed off both hallways and we're like, okay, we put alarm spells and traps by the door we came through.
And I was
So
not expecting you guys to rest here, so I had to make up a mechanic on the fly where the levers would reset every hour.
that did seem like something that you had prepared just in case. It didn't seem like something you made on the fly because it does make sense.
Seemed to make sense.
And
So yeah, I was a little bit like thrown off because you guys were able to rest in the puzzle room, and your precautions were really effective.
kinda, they're kind of effective. The
Well,
mechanic Ben made for us to long rest in this room that he made on the fly is it's essentially like a watch system, which you should do in a dungeon anyway. Is is we're all resting and we're all taking watches. Elias, who is the party's Eladrin, has a trance ability, so he only needs 4 hours. So it was pretty much like we need four watches until Elias can get his rest on, and he can watch for the rest of the night. And it ended up being each one of us having to make a dexterity saving throw to catch the lever and turn it back to neutral position because after an hour, the doors reset and they
and when
open
the
up
doors reset, you have the displacer beast on the other side who tries to rush through and attack the party,
and is waiting for you.
waiting for that to happen. He knows what's going down. And
And
everybody succeeded, like, until we got to Elias, who had had his full rest.
and was good to go. And he made his first save. So he got done that first time, and I was like, "Oh, okay. I think we're gonna be good. I think we're gonna get it." And then we'll fight this Displacer Beast at first at full strength. And then the next one, he failed. And then we had to start a second fight, the boss fight.
Yeah, and Elias had benefited from a long rest. Everybody had benefited from a short rest, but not the long rest that you guys had wanted. So for me, I wasn't sure if this was a hit or a miss because um, there are goblin dungeon keepers that might have attacked during the night. However, the path to the levers was protected with an alarm spell. So my reasoning is that the queen, who is the true master of this dungeon, is omniscient here. She has, scrying or whatever means she needs set up so that she can watch everything that is happening, and it's actually displayed on, like television type things for everybody to watch at the party. So everybody's
And
kind of watching the game,
everyone's watching
Um,
the game at the Buffalo Wild Wings in the Feywild.
exactly. So I figured she also has a means of delivering messages to the goblins who run the place. And so they're not magicians, but she is. And so she kind of warned them of the precautions you guys had taken. Otherwise, I would have had the goblins just attack you while you guys are sleeping, because Sparks and Wires are still down there, near the gate that was keeping the displacer beast in place. There's a small hole in the wall that leads to their kind of, chamber or their base or whatnot.
Did they have normal goblin stats, or were they
They were each a
uh
goblin boss, so they were a little bit tougher. Um,
okay?
I
Probably
didn't
still would have preferred that fight, if I'm honest.
the two
I-
goblins versus the displacer beast.
yeah, that would have been a bit
Yeah,
nicer.
I think it would have been easier. Um, but you would have probably had to end up fighting them all. But actually, what I had expected, and I was trying to leave a little bit of room for during each of these, and it's the reason that I didn't break it down to just a series of rolls when it was, each person's watch and making the dexterity save to try to flip the lever. If I had wanted to expedite that, I'd say, okay, we're going to do this for everybody's watch. Who's next? Go ahead and make your roll. But I described it each time because I expected at some point you guys to realize, let's trap the displacer beast in here. Let's trap him in a hallway and then use the other hallway, and we won't have to fight him.
I
Um,
So I did originally have that thought. It was in fact one of the first thoughts I had going to this room because you could see the displacer beast almost immediately. Like
right.
it was plain to see from the beginning, and I was like, okay, I see a hallway here where we could direct him into a room
Yeah.
and then maybe close it behind him. But I had a hard time trying to figure out how to lead him into a room to make him
And you
stay in
you
there.
did try to throw him some bait.
Yeah. I
And
threw him I
so
threw him a peace offering that he did not take.
So what I tried to do without making it obvious was just take a moment to fall back and be descriptive about what was going on, and in hopes that somebody would say, "Oh, I want to try to trap him." Another way I could have done that was have a player make an intelligence check, but for me, I wanted you guys to figure out that puzzle. Not, I didn't want it to just be reduced to a dice roll. Um, and nobody, it seemed like you had the like kind of the inkling to do that, but then nobody else really ran with that or contributed to that concept at all. So it just didn't end up going down that way. um,
If I could have thought of a way to reasonably have like a good piece of bait or like a good way to lead it into a room, I would have brought it up, but I couldn't think of anything that wouldn't jeopardize a party member
yeah.
because those doors cut off magic, so you can't missy step out of a room.
So for me, you bring this up again, for me that is a potential miss of how I ran this, was the magical barriers. I think they were potentially too restrictive, and that I maybe should have allowed spells to remain that don't require concentration, um, or maybe have, even though you can still see through it, maybe have it effectively break line of sight for line of sight spells. Um, so I thought that might have been a miss for me, because I thought Jason Kendall had some cool ideas, and I felt like I kind of put the kibosh on those, um, uh, and some of them seemed like really good ideas. So for the magical barriers, I probably would just not allow you to cast through it, and then but what I ended up doing was any effect on the other side would dissipate, because there'd be like a the magical connection was severed, or you know. But I don't. I think I would probably do it a little bit differently in the future. That would have also helped you guys in the mimic fight where he was approaching with the unseen servant once again. So for me, that was a potential I might change it depending on how hard I want it to be for the players. Like what you said, it prevents you guys from like cheesing through it, but it also took away some of the like creative solutions a little bit. So I might not have been as restrictive with those magical barriers. Um,
Speaking of the mimic, real quick, if I would have poked that thing with my stick, would have it woken up and then started to attack us, or would have it stayed still and just and stayed being a mimic? Because I also
looking,
had that thought to do that, but I also didn't have a reasonable reason to do that as a PC.
so it does say, and I would have deferred to the ruling here for adhesive when it's in object form. It adheres to anything that touches it. So yeah, it would have like stuck to your stick or weapon or whatnot, and that would have been the first clue for sure. It probably would have been revealed at that point, and I probably would have called initiative in that sense.
Mm.
So it would have been a better measure to take, probably. But like you said, like why would you think to do that? You know. And as a dungeon master, I always appreciate the players approaching it that way too.
Well, let's talk about this displacer fight.
Yeah. For
Because
me, sorry,
boy,
go ahead.
this was a fight and a half. We
That was a
spent,
close one.
I think we spent 4 or 5 turns pelting this thing with attacks and doing minimum damage for 22 attacks. And at this point, it was after the mimic fight, and I had 3 levels of exhaustion, so I had disadvantage on pretty much every roll I made,
Because you
and
couldn't get that rest in. Yeah.
I couldn't get that rest in, which means I had disadvantage on attack rolls. Now, the one good thing that we did have about this was, as the Displacer Beast went down the hall, it was trapped in a corner because the doors went back up because that was about the time to make the check before it reset. The doors went back up, and it was stuck in a corner because it was me and it was friend who was with us at this time, and we were kind of in front of it, keeping it
Yeah.
there,
Pinned.
pinned. And then Jason used, I think, the first good application of grease I think I've ever seen in D&D,
It was great.
where it was the perfect size for where the monster was at, and the monster was pinned down,
Yeah.
and every turn it was falling down.
It
It
kept
was
failing so
it kept
hard.
failing the checks, and then every turn after that he would hit it with mind slivers, so it had a worse chance to succeed on the check. And you would think if it's stuck in a corner and you have the two tanky guys pinning it there, that it would be a pretty even fight, right? Except for the fact that I made one attack that actually hit in the entire time that I was fighting.
I know.
Um, the bard was out of spells. Friend had to actually literally tank the boss by himself at one point, and the only other range option we had was Elias, the who was played by Chris, using magic stone to pelt it to death with rocks.
I know. You guys are dealing like 3 and 4 damage per turn. It's like, oh. For me, I counted this as one of the misses. Um, just because of how it unfolded. So for me, it was anticlimactic, even though it felt dangerous. And I think what I should have done is had the goblins come from behind at this point in time. But I was worried that partially that would have been the end of everybody. Um,
I think it would have. I think that would have been it.
yeah, so I wrote here I was hesitant to do this because the battle was already proving quite challenging, but it would have made good sense. But
I
I
think
think it would have just been too much. That would have just felt cruel.
I think in another world where if I had gotten down one less time and I didn't have disadvantage on attack checks, this fight would have gone a completely different way.
And this was when, I'm sorry, during the mimic fight was when the goblin turned on you, when books turned on you.
Yes, it was revealed that
Forgot to mention that. Yeah.
there was a fireplace where the Displacer Beast was stuck during the fight we had with it that had a lever next to it, and I was
Right.
wondering what that lever did. And I figured since it's next to a fireplace, it's probably something not good. so I didn't mess with it at all.
This was a
And then
separate lever from the 5 levers of the puzzle. Yeah.
there were some party members that were next to that fireplace that were like kind of like taking pot shots at the mimic from around the corner,
Right.
and Books, being under the employ of the lady who runs the dungeon, was like, I gotta make my move and hit the lever, and did, I think, not that much damage.
No, I rolled. I think I rolled 2d6 for it or something like that, and I rolled pretty low. So it could have
And
been potentially,
could have been 12
dangerous, but
damage. It was like
it
two
wasn't.
or three.
Yeah, I think it was
And
3.
and then the wizard swiftly murdered him with a dagger with an absorbed element spell,
Yeah.
and obliterated him with it. And then during the fight with the displacer beast, it being in the same area and covered in grease, Ben made the move to
Right.
have Friend to go do a sacrificial move and dive for the lever and pull it, and rolling 3d6 fire damage because it was covered in grease. Makes sense, right? Except for the fact it did 4 damage,
I know it was so pitiful.
adding to the
Oh,
theme of everything hitting poorly.
I
And
thought
then
friend
Friend went
would
on.
be. Sorry.
And then Friend went unconscious, and
Yeah.
then we really had to pull weight.
I thought that like keeping with the bugbear theme, friend would be pretty brave and pretty set on like just making a badass move if that was his last move in battle. That's partially also why he was like commenting every time somebody would like back up and he's like the only one left on the front lines.
He
It's
really
like
was.
so
Guys, help me out here. I made a move in my next turn to use a healing potion on him, I think.
yeah,
Because
you did.
I didn't want Friend to die. I frankly liked the guy and I was willing to spend a healing potion on him. And I said, screw it, I'll do it. And I healed him back. And
The
then we
Displacer
continued.
Beast was tough too because it's challenge rating 3, so it's a little bit out of your guys' league for how tired you were. So I expected that to be a potentially deadly fight. Um, it was close.
Like I said, if I could hit my attacks, the one attack I did like 13 damage, which was like about 2 turns worth of damage from everybody
Yeah,
else
yeah. You
combined.
scored one great hit, which was pretty. It turned the tides of battle for sure.
But that being said, I I think it was a hit how poorly that battle went. I think it
It
was
was fun. It
funny as hell. Because
it led to our last legs jokes. Like, oh, this thing has however many last legs. Like, oh god.
it, you don't see very often in media, except for the John Wick series, where people get exhausted after fighting for a while, because most D&D fights are like 1 or 2 turns, and we were there for 4 and we were already tired. So in my mind I was imagining all of us just exhausted as hell, just like hitting it with spells. The part I loved the most was just Elias just pelting it with rocks every turn,
Over and over.
just trying to kill
Yeah.
it. It was so funny to
Just like
me.
standing back.
Die,
Yeah.
die. Ah, it was great. I
So
loved
you
it so.
you guys did beat the boss. Nobody died. And then
Surprisingly.
you were like, oh, let the levers had reset. So you thought, oh, let's get the treasure. And that's
Hmm.
when friend said, hey, I'm going to excuse myself and bounce out. And the dwarves did as the
And then
dwarves
the
left
dwarf
after you
showed
guys,
up.
right? Yeah, and then the dwarves woke up. They're like, "Oh, hey guys." Oh, I forget NPCs so frequently. It's a blessing and a curse because they shouldn't be that involved, but sometimes it's just
I
ridiculous.
mean, let's be fair. They were in a dungeon. They got turned to stone, and then one of them got almost dissolved to death. So I can
They're
understand there being
tired.
a. Wasn't one of them like literally good at making contracts? I don't even think these guys were warriors. I think they were just guys, weren't
They're
they?
they're not warriors in the sense that you all are. That's for sure.
So hey, if it makes you feel better, Ben, we all forgot about him until the fight was over, and
It
I was like,
happens every
"Where were
time.
you
Never
guys?"
fails. Um, so then getting out of the dungeon, you guys went off of the hints that I dropped, based off of how friend left, and that was
Hmm.
closing your eyes and
Holding your breath
holding
and
your breath,
taking a dive.
and that further represented air, holding the breath, and darkness, closing the eyes.
Mm.
However, Elias didn't do that. He
No.
just went down. And this is where things were very close to getting very dicey because he fell into where Sparks and Wires, that's kind of their lair where he fell into. Um, but he quickly turned into a
A ferret.
ferret and climbed out, which made sense to me for sure. Um, and instead of the goblins, getting the message that, oh, there's still one there, they're waiting there on the edge of the pit. I thought, if he shows up and tries to say anything, they're going to assault him immediately. It'll probably be the end. Or if he had taken too long, down there in their lair, essentially, they would have, gone and tried to find him. So I was grateful that he figured out like a way to escape very quickly. That worked. It made me happy that I didn't have to just corner him in the dungeon with the two goblin bosses, and that would have surely been the end of Elias.
He's
So
got Missy Step. He can get out. He's got ways of moving around. Probably the
that's
most
true.
mobile one of all of us.
He might have been able to misty step to like the top of the hole if the goblins were down there with him. So
Mm.
that definitely could have been. But I was a little worried about that. But then he followed suit and left in the same way that you guys did.
We
Um,
uh we also obtained from with the other chest that wasn't a mimic some like
right,
gems and
right,
stuff, but also two sending stones that we didn't pass out to the people that went different ways.
right, right.
And we didn't utilize that at all. We're like, oh, everyone left, and Elias is alone with two sending stones, and we didn't give them out to anybody, so we don't really know what's going on here. And then Elias joined us to a Coliseum-esque audience with everybody else looking at us and cheering and booing us.
Absolutely. And for me, that's when you guys had reached level 3. And looking back, I should have had Elias, if we were just doing like a tabletop, like experience based game, Elias should have progressed to level 3 before the Displacer Beast fight when he had his extended rest in the dungeon. Um, but I'm also kind of toying with the level up mechanic a little bit. Um, in that I don't want it to happen necessarily immediately, like, oh, we have this number of experience, let's take a rest. Um, an interesting concept that I heard was wait and require a certain amount of downtime for your players to level up. Like maybe they have a few days of downtime they can take, and that's when they level up. But in this situation, I wanted to tie it into like what happened in the Fey realm a little bit with, you becoming the Echo Knight based off of the magic of the Displacer Beast, and then No Nox receiving this, a tutelage from the Satyr, but then also a cursed instrument at the same time.
Getting swindled out of his two favorite songs.
Yeah. Um, that's as far as I wanted to take the roundup or the hits and misses discussion. So, you have anything else to add to?
Um, Despite this being my first real foray into the Feywild after we got done with the dungeon, I enjoyed it greatly, and I found a good justification for how well I could like choose my wording.
Mm,
Because if you don't know, the Feywild is a very particular place when you make promises and deals. Um, I made a good justification that from backstory reasons, I trained under a merchant to learn words, and he was like my tutor for talking to other people. So it would make sense that I would learn some social contract stuff as well in case I ever need to make a deal with somebody or something like that. So that's how I justified that. But I also like toying around with the laws of the Feywild, which uh I don't have to mitigame for because I don't fully know what they mean
it's
or
a crazy place.
which ones there are. I know that there's some loose ones there that's like, hey, just don't be mean to people and do what you promise and you'll be okay. I don't even know what happens if you don't do that stuff. Like if you don't do it, what consequences there are.
Yeah,
So
I
seeing
think we should go over what happened in the Feywild like on a separate stream.
Mhm.
Like, because I think it's worth revisiting. There was a lot of moving parts there. I had no idea what was going to happen.
Oh,
Oh,
there
did
goes
I
the
lose you?
camera.
Okay.
Just the camera. And my
Um,
mouse.
well, so I would be down to revisit that. We've already gone for like an hour and a half here, a lot longer
Oh,
than I thought. Than I thought we would, and the time just flew by. Um, so yeah, as far as the five lever trap went, I felt like there was a good number of clues. I
mm-hmm.
don't think I accidentally revealed anything, which for me that can sometimes be a problem. And then I thought that,
Zessa. Yeah.
to say the least, man.
You
But
get one, Ben, and you kind of whiffed it.
I know. Oh, and I wasn't going to hold that reveal for very long either, but it was going to be way cooler. And then the intrigue built with the two NPCs that had already been introduced to the story. I thought that was effective too for that climactic encounter or whatnot. But yeah, I think that sums it
Final
up.
final thoughts. Loved the chaos of the poop hallway, and I loved the exhausting Displacer Beast fight.
Yeah, the exhaustion made a lot of like it had a lot of impact, especially with advantage or disadvantage, and then the different skill checks that were happening too. So
Added some good stakes
yeah,
of
well,
we need to leave.
yeah, this is serious. Thanks, Bodhi, for joining me.
No problem.
Um, yeah, I think that's the end of this chat. So I'm gonna close off this stream, close it out.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Godaribus. If I said your name right.